just that creative process of how you work through ideas that they sound good, but then ultimately they're not going to work for one reason or another. And
I don't know. It's like clothes shopping sometimes, man. I'm going to go through there. I'm going to grab, I love this suit. I like that shirt. And all of a sudden I have $20,000 worth of clothes and I'm going to walk out of here with $1,200 worth of clothes. Like I love all this stuff, but when it gets down to it, what do we really need? What really is answering the questions that the client has put in front of us?
Welcome to the Deep Dark Podcast, where we ask seasoned business minds to excavate their history, pulling the best insights, hardest moments, and yes, golden epiphanies. Somewhere in the stories and laughs, we all get a little smarter and feel a little better about our own business ventures. Remember, if it didn't hurt, it doesn't count. Your hosts for this episode are Mark Douglas and Thaddeus Romansky from Fidelis Creative Agency. Strap in and get ready as we plunge once again into the Deep Dark.
Well, I just thank you, Zach, for coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was reflecting on how we first came into contact with each other, and it was one sweaty Texas summer afternoon where I'm running into your building around 4:30, knocking on the door furiously, trying to get a solution to a problem I had that was urgent with a rapidly diminishing timeline.
That's right.
And somebody said, you got to go talk to Zach over at Koll. And so I literally jumped in the car, ran over there. And I think you probably thought this guy's, I don't know if he's got all of his wits about him, because we were in a jam because we had this new project that was surfacing related to building out the interior of a cafe. And it was going to be high profile, high visibility, a lot of foot traffic. And so we wanted the interior to really work well. So I knocked on your door. Thankfully, you were still in the office because normally you're out running around like a crazy man. I found out later. So it was just great that you happened to be there.
No, it was definitely good timing for sure. I think we were it had been a long day already. We had multiple meetings and we were finally catching our breath and having some time to ourselves to try to work through a meeting. And then you knocked on our door and I thought, man, this is like the 20th interruption today. But it was an excellent interruption and probably one of the best ones we've had in the last couple months. So I was grateful that you barged into our office and said, hey, do you have a minute?
Yeah.
When we didn't, but it worked out for the best.
So Zach Etheridge, Koll Interiors.
That's me.
So how did you guys land at that location that Mark walked into? And more importantly, how long have you been with Koll and how did Koll get started?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the latter first and we'll go backwards there. I've been in and around furniture my entire life. My family was in that in Houston and worked with Steelcase and McCoy for almost 40 years. And so I grew up putting furniture, fabric swatch binders together for baseball card money. And so as I went through school and got into sales and marketing, it was kind of just a natural progression for me. And so we ran a Steelcase dealership for most of the Brazos Valley in Central Texas for over 10 years. And then about 2.5 years ago, my wife, Andrea, and I decided that we wanted to do something different and serve people in a different way. We still wanted to be in furniture, be around the A&D community, but take it up a notch and truly be servant heart leaders in that industry. And so that's how we arrived at Koll.
What's A&D?
Architects and designers, the
Okay,
architect and
great.
designer industry. So that's the commercial furniture is we serve the A&D community. We're a conduit between them and the mutual clients that we share. We ended up in that space in downtown Bryan. Almost, it was a happy accident, almost like you come into the office there. They had that when Gessner Engineering and Vaughn Construction redid that building. They had left that west wing unfinished.
This is the old Bowie School.
That's right, the Bowie School building in downtown Bryan. The city was looking to keep as much of their historic architecture as possible, and those two entities, Vaughn and Gessner, did a great service by revitalizing that space. But they had created a real estate brochure that showed that west wing divided into three smaller office spaces. And so I passed on it multiple times because I didn't see the value in having the space chopped up like that. Mm-hmm. And through the repeated pressure from Brett Richards with Coleman Patterson Real Estate, we finally went and looked at the space And it was one of those kind of aha moments that we walked in and we're like, this is absolutely where we're going to put our office. And so it was wide open. The brochure had been a graphic that had been created and wasn't what was really there.
Okay.
So for those who haven't been in the space, you can actually stage up multiple expressions of interior suites.
That's right. The space is meant to be just a large thought starter. And so different vignettes of furniture for different functionality, different vertical markets, all there to inspire parts and pieces of somebody's project.
Yeah.
And then it's also a working space for us as well. We host events there. We try to be a true resource to the community.
Yeah.
I remember as a little kid when I would go to the furniture store with my parents sometime, and they would used to have those little set piece bedroom or living room, and I just always caught my imagination getting to sit down on that couch and imagine, oh, this is somebody's living room, or I wonder how soft or
we sit around and
was.
imagine us winning more projects, but I don't know. It's hopefully it pans out.
Yeah, but I think you were excited when you walked into that space. It gave you a good feeling that, yeah, I think I have been pointed in the right direction.
Yes.
It's a pretty sweet space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you just walk in and you realize, oh, they understand the aesthetic and what it is that we're trying to do inside square footage. Mm-hmm. And so the project, and I think we explained this a little bit in greater detail elsewhere, but it was a giant cavernous space. So I knew it had to be filled with things that were going to warm up the place. It was going to fill some of this cavity. It was going to help break noise. And I knew I can say all of these things to Zach, and he's going to go, I'm way ahead of you. I got it figured out. And sure enough, he did. So, yeah.
Well, I think you guys did a good job of framing up what the expectation was, and that and to your point, it was a cavernous space. It was kind of cold and sterile, and it was a monumental task that I think you guys already had done the lion's share of having a running start at. How we're going to warm this space up? How we're going to bring some human elements into this space, and kind of teed us up. And so I think the synergy between all of it really helped things expedite and get to where we ended up.
Well, it was an interesting design and brand problem to tackle, because Daisy White, who the restaurant's named after, is anything but a cold, hard, sterile person.
That's right.
But yet the space that was going to be her restaurant was cold, hard, bland. It was beige.
That's
very
right.
Beige.
Yeah, I mean, it's a museum, right? And so we're showcasing a large train engine, Marine One helicopter. Everything. The backdrop to all of that is very homogeneous. Lots of big limestone slabs, and so everything from the floor to the walls to the ceiling all felt the same. And so it was a unique space and a unique challenge that we had this very small rectangle, and in there we have to create all these different dynamic elements that issue a feeling that is contrary to what the massive structure that is surrounding it is putting out there.
That's right. Yeah, and also maximizing seating, ingress, egress concerns, wheelchair accessibility, just the way that the space was going to be used. There were just so many variables that I knew had outpaced my ability to forecast. I knew how it was supposed to feel. I didn't know how we were going to get there, and I didn't know how we were going to fill it up. I certainly on the sourcing and being able to know how in a very compressed timeline, how you can go find the right stuff for that right placement. So that was why I knew we had to have interior design help.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask, obviously you guys are always excited when new business walks through.
Sure, absolutely.
All of us are. But what was your team kind of first initially excited about once you kind of got some initial details on what the project was? What was particularly attractive about it?
I think we were excited that when we realized that y'all weren't the architects, because that's how it came across in the beginning.
Okay.
It was like, awesome, we're going to work with a marketing firm. That's different. We haven't we've worked with marketing teams before, but not in that direct capacity like that. And so that was interesting. And Nicole Overman, our lead interior designer, is just a tremendous force, and she does excellent work. And so I think she kind of ran head on at this and already right off the jump had an idea of what direction we needed to go. And you can see a lot of her influence throughout that space. And I think the reason it is so warm and inviting has very much everything to do with her and her abilities. And so we're very grateful to have her on board and on our team. And so getting to do something a little bit different that wasn't corporate office or healthcare or higher education, to where we have this hospitality opportunity, but moreover, we were featuring an individual, right? And so in that space, we kind of got to do some things that maybe we wouldn't normally do. And I think Nicole excels at that, and I think is evident by the final product that we have out there.
Yeah. So, you kind of just touched on that. So what, your verticals in the market, who is it that you're typically working with? And why is it that Koll has tailored your offering the way that you have?
So historically, contract commercial furniture dealers, those are probably the four big ones that we play in, right? So corporate office, healthcare, hospitality, higher education. If you think about those and all the businesses and that fall under those four umbrellas, it's furniture rich. It's constant churn too, right? Corporate office, somebody's either growing, going out of business, doing something, moving, expanding. And every time we do that, there's new opportunities. Business models change, how we work changes. Higher education continues to just be a juggernaut. Think about the university across the street from us. There's 80,000 students there. They at some point all have to sit down at some point, right?
So a common thread there is high touch and durability concerns.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And so the difference between commercial furniture and what we would deem residential furniture is that's that litmus, that's that line of demarcation, I guess, is that it is high touch, it is high use, and it's things that have to be sustainable for 10 years, more than that. But all those verticals tend to just constantly have need.
Right.
And we're here to help facilitate that.
That's great. So how long have you guys been in business?
So Koll has been in business about 2.5 years. We're going into year 3.
Okay.
We've just experienced a tremendous amount of blessings and success as we've grown, and the future continues to look bright for us here locally in the Brazos Valley, but also as we expand across the state.
Yeah. One of the things that we've said again and again is how much of y'all's thinking matches how we approach business and how we're attracting clients in the marketplace. We know that we landed in Bryan College Station because of access to the university and young talent, but also because it's in the golden triangle, right, of DFW, Houston, Austin. So was that part of the thinking too, is knowing that you would be able to access these larger markets relatively easily?
Yeah, part of it's that. I think these tertiary markets hold value. So places like Bryan College Station, that we are inside of this Texas triangle, but those smaller tertiary markets, like I referenced, I think have significant amount of value in that they are rich in education, they're rich in healthcare. We just don't have the big corporate presence here,
right.
But that does exist just an hour or two in any direction from here, and so you have the ability to make an impact locally here, to develop a reputation, to be able to tell a marketable story that you can then go and take to those larger markets.
That's right.
And those entities or those clients that we pursue in those larger markets don't necessarily always get to experience vendors or people coming to them in that way that have that story. And
That's
so here we can do things that within a short amount of time, the fruits of our labor, whatever we put into it, it's palpable, it's real. We can see we did a good job here and it affected these people in real time. It's not, we did this project and maybe 3 years down the road, we hear back from somebody. And I think that helps, that motivates you, that fuels you, that drives you to do more, to be better, to keep sharpening the sword, because we get to do this project with Fidelis and we go to Daisy's and we put it in there and instantly there's feedback.
Right.
Okay, we hit the mark. We're going to do more of this. We're going to work with Mark and Thaddeus more, people like that. And so I think that helps expedite your business in that regard. It gives you instant feedback.
That's right. And the thing that was so much fun for me is it's not always the case that our clients have a grand opening event where you actually get to go and see the big aha reveal moment and get immediate feedback. That was huge. That was very gratifying because, you know, we were still throwing things in there the day that it opened.
Sure.
And you and I were on ladders hoisting things and trying to not break our neck. And so it was fun to go in and actually see the delight on Daisy's face and at the George Bush Library, all of that. It was just really fun. So I'd love to do more of those.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that was great. We'd take 2 or 3 of those a year. It'd be great.
Yeah. That'd be good.
Do you remember some of the ideas that we were throwing around about how we were going to put that space together at the very beginning? Remember you threw out that idea of the walls,
Movable
on
walls.
the movable carts.
Yeah, I'm glad we didn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm glad we didn't do that. 1,000%. Yeah.
But maybe I was just kind of using that to talk about let listeners and viewers in a little bit on just that creative process of how you work through ideas that they sound good, but then ultimately they're not going to work for one reason or another. And
I don't know.
how
It's
you get
like
there.
clothes shopping sometimes, man. I'm going to go through there. I'm going to grab, I love this suit. I like that shirt. And all of a sudden I have $20,000 worth of clothes. And I'm going to walk out of here with $1,200 worth of clothes. Like, I love all this stuff, but when it gets down to it, what do we really need? What
Right.
really is answering the questions that the client has put in front of us?
Right.
And so to your point, I liked the mobile walls at first, but then that would have never been a good idea. But I think when we put it all out there and we don't have it just swirling around in our heads, well, then we can find parts and pieces of that we like, that we can build on. And a lot of times, if you're sharing those ideas, if you're sharing those creative processes with others, that spurs them to go, I remember this project that we had, that we did something similar. This part worked, this part didn't. Let's elaborate on that. Let's blow that up. How can that be different? How can we do more with that? And I think that's how all 3 of us kind of arrived at where we did. We started talking about one thing. Well, we like the mobile walls. Let's lose the mobile part. Let's bring in some walls. Let's bring in something permanent. Let's put this permanency in there, because with the permanency in there, now we can put elements in there that are human, that do warm the space, that aren't temporary. Because we want it to feel like it's been there for forever and it has presence.
Right.
And so I think that's the road you can kind of go down. But if you don't ever put it out there and put it on the table and aren't afraid to have it just rejected, like, that's silly, we're not doing that. But I think that drives creativity.
Yeah, because I think we were trying to figure out how do we make that space smaller and more intimate. And ultimately, we didn't decide on the modular walls, but I think that's what kind of led us to your entrance idea. Talk about that a little bit. And I don't remember who exactly came up with the display case idea and the banquette seating.
That was cool.
But that helped shrink that space down, so we can talk about those 2 factors also.
And the large tables.
And the
you know, that is part
that
of the
came
fun.
from the client, actually, the common table, so we can talk about that too.
Yeah, that is the fun part
Yes.
to me of the kinds of work that we do, which is, sure, the sweaty day of moving tables in, as awesome as that feels, it's really a lot more fun to imagine the possibilities. And so, you know, those early conversations were really interesting. I mean, I don't even, the big, I should shout out Jackrabbit Manufacturing here, who put together this steel structure. That was a throwaway idea that I put on a whiteboard with you, just going, well, what if we did this thing? And it felt like it was structural in the entrance, but it did confine, so that you kind of move through a space and then you open up to an interior, as opposed to it feeling like just another part of the massive exhibition hall. So
yeah, it was kind of a line of demarcation also.
We needed something that would break it. And so I am not a furniture designer, and I've never done any architectural steel anything. But when I pitched it to you, you were like, actually, yeah, that could actually work. So it was fun to be in that concept iteration phase, as awkward at times as that can be, to know that we had a partner where I could say, but it looks like this on a whiteboard, and him to go, yeah, let's do that.
And a compliment to you guys, you didn't say, oh, well, no, we're doing the interior design. You guys stay out of that space. You were happy to have us collaborate.
Yeah,
with you guys in that.
I think
That was
that's
great.
well, and I appreciate that. I think it's part of how we work at Koll. It's part of our culture there. I subscribe to the notion. I don't care whose name is on the back of the jersey. It's the mission on the front, right? So the goal is to serve the client.
That's right.
So whether it's coming from you or if it's coming from me, as long as we execute that, everything on the back end tends to work out.
right.
And so if you're always serving from that perspective of, I don't have to be right.
Right.
This doesn't have to be my idea.
Yeah.
Does it serve the client? Does it move them forward? Does it
That's
make
right.
them better? Well, if we're checking all those boxes, ours probably get checked on the back end.
Best idea wins. Yeah.
Right. Wherever it comes from, let's just do the best thing for the client. And then at the end of the day, we'll all go have drinks and life will be great. To your point about the space itself, I think I love the idea of bringing in the big steel pieces because that building is so significant in scale and so big. I think the challenge was that room is so massive and then it has to go down into this one smaller space. And then that space has to be just as dynamic as
Right.
this tipped ratio, right? That other space is massive. And then we have this little space over here, but this has to be just as dynamic as that other space. And so I think creating that purposeful entrance and then immediately it's almost like a 1-point perspective drawing with those tables. They point back to the back of that room. So we stretched it as big as we possibly could and then take your eye vertical with all the different artifacts and things like that. I don't know that you could treat that space in a better way, if I have to say.
Yeah.
I would agree with you.
Well, it moved it from feeling like a hospital cafeteria to an actual cafe where you want to spend time and have meaningful conversations.
And one of the things I loved about the display case idea is that it was kind of a nod to the fact that we are at a museum. It was bringing some things out of the Bush Foundation's archives that hadn't seen the light of day, frankly, for years, but they weren't in the vein of most of the display materials that people would see in the museum. It was giving this kind of more personal side to President and Mrs. Bush, focusing on the kinds of friends that they were, the kinds of people that they were, and I thought that was the table, the welcoming, open table, and I thought that was really, really neat.
Yeah, no, I think Fidelis and the team at the foundation did a great job of curating those elements to go in there and picking just the right ones. They were personal without feeling, contrived or overly thought. Here's a jacket that he wore at this thing, but it's his, and it looks like it was worn. It looks like it just, I think, demonstrated a great deal of intimacy and warmth for that space, and y'all did an excellent job of that.
Well, I should say it was fun working with a client like Daisy and the Bush Foundation because we knew that the high bar was essentially to communicate something of the quality of not just Daisy and John White, but the Bushes themselves and the way that those two families interacted. So that was great. And then to know already built in was Chef Tay going to make sure that the cuisine matches the quality of everything we build. It was just a fun convergence of a lot of really quality people all tackling the same problem. And
which, speaking of, last but not least, is High Point, who came along for the large scale signage
fantastic.
And the art installation in the display cabinet.
Couldn't have done that without High Point and Jackrabbit. So it was just fun. So we wanted you to come in and just kind of talk through what you guys. We know the quality of what Koll is, and we just wanted to make sure that we could talk through the story of that project.
Yeah, no, we're very appreciative of that. It was enjoyable for us on a lot of the same levels you spoke about. It's fun when everybody wants their project to be a success, but usually when we're dealing with corporate or healthcare, it's we've got mandates that we have to meet, and it's all these other things that are put upon us that we have to do. This was so much more personal and wanting to do a good job for somebody who's been so good to so many people. And that that overriding thing just every day made it just easier to want to push this is good, but let's do this because this is excellent. So it was great.
Well, Zach, thanks for coming in, and
No, thanks for having us.
Hey, share this video around, and most importantly, go and check out Daisy's Table. It's a fantastic space. Thanks to Koll.
Thanks.
Take care.